Welcome to our homestead. I am Ashley, and we are a family of 10 living on 10 acres in northern Alberta on a homestead that we have been building up by hand for the past 10 years. In this video, I'm going to share a little bit about what we have been discovering on the carnivore diet, as well as some carnivore meals that our family has been enjoying, as well as why we have been shifting to this way of eating. So if this is something that interests you, I hope that you enjoy this video. So to start this video, I'm going to share this delicious coffee that we have been enjoying for the past 10 years. And typically Geoff makes our coffee, and he makes it in a percolator, which is the most delicious coffee I've ever tasted. But this morning I was just making a small cup for myself, and we will blend some butter in that, a little bit of salt, and whole milk or cream. And I just find that that's a really great way to start the morning, just that those good fats mixed with the caffeine. I can think better. It gives me more sustainable energy. And sometimes what I will do is intermittent fasting. I won't even eat breakfast. I'll just drink some salt water in the morning first thing, and then I'll have this high fat coffee, and then I won't eat until noon. And that's a way of eating that I discovered several years ago. I just feel like I have more energy. It helps me with my thyroid and a lot of health issues that I personally face. And then I'm sharing what we did for breakfast, and that's these carnivore cheeseburger wraps. I don't have measurements for this recipe because it's not really a recipe. I just was in my kitchen using what I had, and I had some milk powder and eggs, and I just know how much I need to put together to feed the amount of people that I need to feed for our home. So I don't have measurements for this, but I just put some eggs and powdered milk in my blender along with some salt, and I blended that really well, and then I poured it onto my hot griddle because I wanted to make a flatbread or a crepe, and it actually worked really well. So this is something that we've been enjoying doing lately, because before this, if I were to make cheeseburgers, I was just doing some scrambled eggs or poached eggs or something like that on the side. And I wanted to do something so that it felt like we were getting a little bit more variety. So I just poured this batter out onto my hot griddle, and I was able to turn it into this crepe or flatbread. And if you're not carnivore, these are actually still really delicious. If you were just like low carb or something, you could put some heavy whipping cream in them, some berries, you could drizzle some honey or some maple syrup on top. And for us, though, I added some cheese and my burger along with some more butter on top of the burger and salt, and then some cheese. And then I just folded that crepe over, and I turned it on the griddle so that it could get nice and hot, and all of that cheese could melt inside of that crepe. And it was so delicious. This is becoming one of my favorite things to make. And then what I will also do is take it and just put some cheese in it and fold it over, and then cut it and give it to my toddlers. And they really enjoyed eating that. So that's the first meal that I'm sharing in this video. And the reason that we're trying carnivore is because we do live in a really harsh climate in northern Alberta, and it has been a dream of mine to grow our own food and can that food and have it last throughout the winter. We have found it so difficult to grow here. We have very short growing seasons. We have very harsh winters. We tend to have scorching days throughout the summer, and then really cold nights at night in the summers. And so that's not really conducive to a lot of growth, and we can't grow a variety of things. Something too that we have found is that it's almost like you need to create a little bit of a microclimate to grow here, because we have such a dry climate. We don't have a whole lot of humidity in the air, and I have found that humidity makes a huge difference in the integrity of the soil. So as we reassess this year, heading into a new spring and a new summer, and we're going over the projects and things that we need to get done, we're finding that gardening is something that seems to be holding us back. We've put so much time and money and effort into doing it, and we've really had very little to show for it. This year, trying carnivore, we wanted to see if it would help us with some health conditions before we committed to it. So we just tried it for a few weeks. And we just really couldn't believe how quickly we started to feel better. Some injuries that Geoff had sustained years ago that created a lot of inflammation in his body, that started to go away. Myself, I have a thyroid condition, and I have definitely noticed a huge difference in the way that my thyroid is functioning. Brain fog, fatigue, all of that seems to be lifted. And we're also just really enjoying eating this way. I have not had sugar or carbs or even honey in several weeks. And I normally crave those things a lot. And I just don't crave them anymore. I don't really care to make a cup of tea and load it up with a ton of honey or make some cookies or something like that in the afternoon. That's typically when I start craving sugar and carbs. And I'm really enjoying this steady, sustainable energy. So we started looking at, well, is carnivore something, if we're going to eat this way, is it something that we can produce? And it is easier to raise animals here because animals can eat the vegetation that we can't. And then they turn all of that vegetation into something that's just full of vitamins and minerals, and it's more bioavailable for us to consume. So we are realizing that we can more easily produce beef and chicken and eggs and butter and milk and cream. As we started the carnivore diet, I have been reading and listening to everything that I can on the diet. And recently, I ran across the story of a really interesting woman named Maggie, and she actually lives in Alberta. She is a rancher, and I listened to her story on a podcast, and she actually raised her entire family on carnivore out of necessity. They became ranchers. They ended up raising their own beef, but before that they just relied on hunting. And she today is 84, I believe, and she does not look like she is a day over 60. So when I listened to her story about how she raised her family on carnivore, and she just struck me as super confident and super spunky, and I just couldn't believe it. I really loved hearing her story because I was so afraid that I was going to maybe mess up and not feed my family in just the right way doing this diet. And so listening to her and how she raised her entire family like that and how they're all so healthy, it was really incredible. And if anybody is interested to listen to that podcast, I will put it in the description of this video. I have also started all my babies out eating like this, and then I would slowly add in vegetables and carbohydrates and things like that. So I thought, this probably isn't that far of a stretch to just take my kids back to the way that I actually had started them out on eating, on solid foods. Okay, so I thought that I would just briefly share what we have been buying on carnivore. And whenever we are grocery shopping, we're also looking at what can we invest in that we can produce. So for example, this year, something that we are attempting to achieve is clearing space and building an area to have a milk cow. I have had a milk cow before. It was really inconvenient. I just sort of pushed it on the homestead. We weren't ready at all. And I had to move her around the acreage and just, from tree to tree or whatever. We didn't have the fencing or buildings or anything like that. So I did have to sell her because it just wasn't the right time. But learning from that experience, we know what it's going to cost to invest in bringing another milk cow onto the acreage. And that's one of our goals this year. So we have been buying a lot of butter, cheese, and milk and yogurt. And those are all things that we know that we can produce here. We've also, even though we have chickens currently, we've also been buying eggs because we've just been eating a lot more of them. But I do plan to increase our flock and work towards just producing our own eggs. And then as for meat, we have been buying a lot of ground beef and burgers because those are the most economical for us right now. But at some point, we would like to raise some beef cows. We also hunt, so we have moose, elk, and deer. Those are resources for us out here. So we have just been trying to buy what we can produce. Also chickens. We would like to get to a point where we are learning how to efficiently butcher our own chickens. This is not quite enough that I have on my table, and not quite enough for an entire week for our family. It's more like maybe 5 days. So budgeting carnivore, we're still working on that. There are 10 of us, so we are trying to figure out what we can afford to sustain the diet. And then, of course, we still have quite a bit in the house that isn't carnivore. So we are finishing up those things before just completely jumping in. Although I have been just eating carnivore because I just feel better doing it. So this is probably 5 days, maybe slightly less for food for us, but we are still working to figure that out. So I thought that I would just share that in this video as well, because I know for me, especially when we started discussing eating this way, I really couldn't wrap my mind around what that kind of shopping list looks like, especially in today's economy with inflation the way that it is. For example, the ground beef that we have been buying, we started buying that probably 4 years ago, and it was $15, and today it is $35. So the inflation on all of those things that we're buying has gone way up, which is another reason why we want to eat in such a way that we ourselves can produce. Okay, so on the carnivore diet for us, we don't have a whole lot of leeway. I'm not really adding in salmon or seafood or anything like that because I haven't found any that I think is actually good. I've kind of read conflicting things on some of that. So mostly, yeah, it's just ground beef and burgers and chicken and eggs. So trying to take some basic ingredients and making it seem like it's a little bit different to feel like there's variety, that has been a little bit of a challenge, but it's been a fun challenge nonetheless. So for this next meal, I am again making those same crepe flatbread things, and instead of wrapping it up with a burger and then melting the cheese so it's like this gooey, cheesy, meaty melted sandwich type of thing, I am just making those crepes, and then I'm filling them with some butter, ground beef, and shredded cheese, and then I put a little bit of yogurt on it, and they were so delicious. Okay, on a little bit of a side note here, if you're wondering why I'm not shredding this cheese and I'm just cutting it, I actually had that cheese in the freezer for almost a year. And I found that whenever I pull the cheese that I store in the freezer out, if I just try to slice it, it never slices into nice, neat slices, but it crumbles perfectly. So this night, I just thought that that was the perfect use for that freezer cheese. Okay, so here are these flatbread wrap type of things with the ground beef and the cheese and the yogurt inside of them. And again, that's just the egg and powdered milk crepe there. And they held up so beautifully and they tasted so delicious. Okay, so for this last meal, Geoff took over this one. He has been doing so many of the carnivore meals, and that has been such a help. So he just took some ground beef and ground bison and mixed that into a bowl. And then there's this dry cottage cheese that we have been purchasing at Costco, and it makes such a great binder. He mixed that in with the ground beef along with some salt, and he's going to just form those into meatballs. To that meatball mixture, he also added some eggs as a binder, along with some shredded cheddar, because I just really like cheddar with ground beef. I think that the two flavors are really great together. And then we just greased a 9 by 14, I think that pan is, and it's a really nice deep dish. And he formed the meatballs to fit into that dish. And then we baked those at 350 until they were done. With the leftovers, once he filled that casserole dish, he just made some small ones and put those into this little cast iron dish for our toddlers to eat, and they really enjoyed those. Okay, and for this last recipe, I don't know the measurements of it, but I can write this down in the description for anyone who might be interested. And I don't really know what to call this. It's kind of like a custard carnivore bread type of thing. I'm not really sure. We're just trying to find ways to make creative recipes that have a lot of protein in them and fat for us. And it's just this cream with a bunch of eggs, some salt, and the cottage cheese that I had mentioned that we have been buying from Costco that's really nice and dry. He crumbles that and puts that in there as well, and then blends all of that really well and puts it into a casserole dish. And this casserole dish is really convenient because the glass top, it sort of just creates the perfect little environment to make like a custard type of thing without needing to do a water bath, and bakes that. So for this night, we had the meatballs that we made with all of that cheese, and then this side dish custard thing, and that was really delicious. So I'm going to end here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if this is something that interests you, I hope you guys will stick around, because we've got lots of homesteading stuff coming up, along with the way that we are eating and producing for ourselves. So I really appreciate you guys joining us. Thanks for watching.